Imagine moving into a mansion only to discover it's not just an old, abandoned place, but the epicenter of dark, ancient secrets. Ethan Miller finds himself in this exact situation as he cares for his sick grandmother in a house that seems to have a life of its own. Every step inside reveals more than just family memories. It uncovers mysteries that defy logic and sanity. In this video, you'll be taken on a journey of suspense and unsettling revelations, where the walls whisper secrets and the past intertwines with the present in chilling ways. If you're ready to uncover the mysteries of a mansion where nothing is as it seems, then keep watching. This story will grip you and surprise you at every turn.
Behind the doors.
The mansion in the small town of Maplewood stood imposing, but marked by time and abandonment. The dusty windows seemed like empty eyes watching the world outside, while the wind howled through the cracks, sounding like the laments of lost souls. Ethan Miller stopped in front of the house, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had moved in to take care of his sick grandmother, but he could hardly imagine that the house held secrets that defied logic. As he crossed the iron gate, which creaked much like the staircase he would soon have to face, Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. The stone path, covered by a carpet of dry leaves, led to a solid wooden door, whose peeling paint revealed layers of faded colors. He took a deep breath and pushed the door, which opened with a groan, as if it were complaining about the new presence. Inside, the air was heavy, laden with the odor of mold and desolation. The furniture was covered by white sheets, as if in a deep sleep. Ethan took a hesitant step, his eyes wandering around the room. The echoes of the house seemed to whisper secrets, and he felt like an intruder in a world that did not belong to him. "It's just an old house," he muttered to himself, trying to convince himself that there was nothing supernatural there. While exploring the first floor, his eyes fell on a dusty sideboard. He approached, drawn to a dusty picture frame that hung slightly crooked on the wall. Wiping the glass with his hand, an old photograph was revealed. It was his grandmother, young and smiling, but beside her was an unknown man, with a penetrating and enigmatic look. Ethan's heart raced. "Who are you?" he whispered, as if the image could answer. The man's expression in the photograph seemed alive, and the young man felt a chill in his stomach. Determined to continue his exploration, Ethan headed for the staircase leading to the second floor. Each step creaked under his weight, as if the wood were complaining about his presence. As he climbed, a shiver ran through his body, and he paused for a moment, looking back. "It's all right, isn't it?" He spoke aloud, trying to dispel the discomfort that surrounded him. The staircase, however, continued to emit a mournful sound, and a strange feeling that something was watching him settled in his mind. He decided to ignore the unsettling feeling and continued to climb, his hesitant steps echoing down the dark hallway of the second floor. The walls seemed to close in around him, and an almost inaudible whisper floated in the air. "Ethan." He shook his head, trying to dismiss the sensation that someone was there, in the shadows, watching him. Finally, he reached the top of the stairs, where a long hallway stretched out before him. The doors lined up like silent sentinels, guarding mysteries he was not yet ready to unveil. He hesitated for a moment, the photograph of his grandmother and the unknown man still etched in his mind. What else does this house hide? He wondered, as the faint daylight filtered through the dust-covered windows. Knowing that his grandmother awaited him downstairs, Ethan took a deep breath, trying to shake off the sense of oppression. He couldn't let fear dominate him. "I'm just here to help her," he reaffirmed to himself as he prepared to descend again. But before he could take a step, a loud creak echoed through the house, and the young man turned abruptly, feeling that the house was alive in a way he could never imagine. Ethan woke up abruptly, the sound of something creaking upstairs cutting through the silence of the night. His heart pounding, he sat up in bed and looked around, the outlines of the old mansion standing out in shadows. He couldn't ignore the noises, which sounded like a call. With a deep sigh, he got up and put on a coat before leaving the room. The house was shrouded in mystery, and he felt that the answer to everything was upstairs, waiting for him. The staircase creaked under his feet, each step echoing like a lament. The faint light of the flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Upon reaching the top, Ethan hesitated at the sight of a slightly open door he had never noticed before. His heart pounded in his chest, and curiosity led him to approach. What could be inside? He thought as he hesitantly pushed the door. The old wood groaned as if protesting against the intrusion. The room was shrouded in darkness, except for a beam of light filtering through a dust-covered window. The furniture was draped with white sheets, giving the room a ghostly appearance. As he crossed the threshold, a soft breeze passed over him, bringing a floral scent that made him feel a wave of nostalgia. "Jasmine?" he murmured, remembering his grandmother and how she used to perfume the house with fresh flowers. Suddenly, a shadow stood out in the corner of the room. Ethan froze, eyes wide, as the dark figure seemed to dissipate in front of him, like smoke in the wind. "Who's there?" His voice came out weaker than he expected. But there was no answer, only a heavy silence that seemed to absorb even the sounds of the house. He felt a chill run down his spine, but the longing for the floral scent kept him rooted in place. Disturbed, Ethan decided he wouldn't be able to sleep again. As he moved away from the room, images of an old tragedy began to invade his mind. He remembered his grandmother telling stories about the mansion, about laughter and tears that echoed between those walls. But now, everything seemed shrouded in a mist of sadness. As he lay down again, the nightmares began to form, filled with unknown faces and whispers that resonated like echoes of warnings. "Please don't go upstairs," a familiar feminine voice seemed to float in his mind. It was his grandmother's voice. He found himself in a dark hallway, the staircase creaking under his feet, and the feeling of being watched was unbearable. "Ethan, you can't stay here." The voice was louder now, almost desperate. He woke up abruptly, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his forehead. The night still rained, but the fear was now real. With his heart still racing, he got up and walked to the window, trying to calm his thoughts. The moon illuminated the garden, and the shadows of the trees seemed to dance. It was then that he decided he needed to understand what was happening, not just with the house, but also with his family. "Maybe I can find out more about what happened here," he thought, determined to investigate. The next morning, as the sun began to rise, Ethan sat at the breakfast table, where his grandmother watched him with a distant look. "You had nightmares again, my dear?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan hesitated before answering, not wanting to frighten her. "Just a little, Grandma, but I'm fine." She shook her head, a sad smile forming on her lips. "The house has its stories, Ethan. Some are better left in the past." He felt a lump in his throat, her words sounding like a warning. "I'm going to find out the truth, Grandma," he assured, though he didn't know how. "I can't just leave it like this." Her eyes sparkled for a moment, as if she was about to share a secret. "Beware of the man on the stairs," she murmured before losing herself in her thoughts again. The tension in the air was palpable, and Ethan knew there was more between them than words could express. The mansion's mystery was beginning to unfold, and he was determined to unravel it, even if it meant facing his worst fears. The next morning, light filtered through the dusty curtains of the old mansion, casting dancing shadows on the worn wooden floor. Ethan awoke with the feeling that something was different. The heavy silence of the house seemed deeper, as if the walls held secrets he was not yet prepared to discover. As he got up, he remembered the whispers from the previous night and the floral scent he had smelled in the dark room. A shiver ran down his spine, but he forced himself to ignore it. He went down to the kitchen, where he found his grandmother sitting at the table, a distant look on her aged face. She was holding a cup of tea, but seemed not to notice that the drink was slowly cooling. Ethan approached, worried. "Grandma, how are you feeling today?" She turned her head slowly, as if waking from a deep dream. "Ethan, dear," she murmured, her eyes wide. "The man on the stairs. He's here. He must not go up." Ethan's heart raced. "Who is this man, Grandma? What happened to him?" He sat down, trying to understand what was happening in his grandmother's confused mind. He came to warn us. It's not safe up there. The staircase wasn't made to be used, Ethan. Don't go up, she repeated, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and urgency. But why not? What's up there? Ethan insisted, curiosity growing inside him, despite the warning. His grandmother closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to recover a lost memory. There were secrets, things that should not have been revealed. The staircase. It holds the pain of our family, the disappearances. It's all connected. Ethan felt a knot forming in his stomach. He remembered the old photograph he had found, the unknown man next to his grandmother. But Grandma, what about the man in the photo? Who was he? He was a family friend. Or maybe he wasn't. The truth is, he was involved in things no one should be. I don't want you to get hurt, she replied, her voice now almost a whisper. The conversation left Ethan uneasy. He got up and decided he needed to learn more about the mansion's history. After breakfast, he headed to the library, a space filled with dusty books and furniture covered by white sheets. The light came through the dirty windows, creating a somber and almost magical atmosphere. He began to browse through old books, searching for clues about his family and the history of the house. The yellowed pages revealed details about the old family that had lived in the mansion. Mysterious disappearance, strange practices. The staircase was never meant to be used. These words seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if they were addressing him directly. Ethan was drawn to a passage that spoke of a dark pact made by one of his ancestors, which had brought a curse upon the lineage. The text mentioned that the staircase was a symbol of this pact, a path to the unknown. This can't be true, Ethan murmured to himself, a chill running through his body. He felt that the house was alive, that its walls were breathing, and that he was an intruder in a world he didn't understand. But at the same time, curiosity drove him to delve deeper. He decided to ignore his grandmother's warnings and climb the staircase again. Each step seemed to echo through the entire hallway, a deep, resonant sound that intensified his doubts. Why am I doing this? He questioned himself, but the urge to discover the truth was stronger. At the top of the stairs, Ethan hesitated for a moment, hearing the creak of the step under his weight. The staircase seemed to protest, as if it were alive, trying to convince him to turn back. I can't stop now, he murmured, determination growing inside him. And then, with a push of courage, he moved forward, determined to face whatever awaited him. The feeling of being watched was stronger than ever, and he didn't know if it was just his imagination or if there really was something more in that house. In the dim light of the old mansion's library, Ethan found himself surrounded by an aura of mystery and unease. The smell of aged paper and dust filled the air, as his hands ran over the spines of the dusty books. His gaze settled on a leather-bound journal, which seemed to have been forgotten for decades. With a mix of curiosity and apprehension, he pulled it from the shelf, feeling the weight of its history. As he opened the journal, the yellowed pages revealed delicate but hurried handwriting, as if the author were desperate to put their thoughts into words. Ethan began to read aloud, his voice echoing in the silence of the library. The rituals must be performed under the full moon, he murmured, his eyes widening as the words unfolded. It spoke of occult practices, invocations, and pacts with entities that promised power in exchange for souls. Ethan's heart raced. What is this? He wondered, feeling a chill down his spine. Rituals? Souls? What really happened here? With each page he turned, the feeling that the creaking staircase was more than just a step, but a portal to other dimensions, became more real. He began to piece together a dark puzzle, and the idea that he was not alone in the house solidified in his mind. The voices he had heard, the whispers in the walls, everything seemed to connect in a sinister way. Ethan, his grandmother's voice echoed in his thoughts. He remembered her distant gaze, full of fear and doubt. The man on the stairs. Her words resonated like a warning, but he was determined to find out the truth. That night, as the moon lit up the clear sky, a new wave of creaks echoed through the house, as if the staircase were calling him. Fear mingled with curiosity, and Ethan decided to go downstairs, driven by the uncontrollable urge to investigate. As he opened the library door, a cold breeze enveloped him, and he hesitated for a moment, but the need to understand what was happening drove him forward. As he passed through the dark hallway, he noticed that the living room door was ajar, almost as if someone were calling him. A chill ran down his spine. He slowly approached, his steps muffled by the worn carpet. The dim light of the lamp illuminated the interior, and what he saw made his heart race. Familiar objects were arranged in strange circles, as if a ritual had been performed there. A sense of déjà vu enveloped Ethan as he recognized each item. The ceramic vase his grandmother always used, the small box that held old letters, and even the old wall clock that had stopped at a specific moment, as if frozen in time. "Who did this?" Ethan murmured, looking around, but the room was empty. The silence was deafening, and he felt he was being watched. He sat on the edge of the sofa, his heart pounding, as he tried to process the scene before him. Suddenly, a noise caught his attention, a soft crackling, as if something were being moved. He turned, searching for the source of the sound, when his gaze fixed on a tape recorder that was on, the light blinking. With a hesitant gesture, he approached and pressed the play button. His grandmother's voice emerged from the device, clear and anguished. "Please, no. I can't let this happen again." The recording seemed to capture a moment of despair, and Ethan felt his stomach churn. "If you hear the call of the stairs, don't go up. Don't do it." Her voice faded away, and silence took over the room again. Ethan was in shock. He remembered the stories his grandmother used to tell about the house, but he had never believed the situation was so serious. She knew, he thought, his heart heavy with concern. She always knew about the house's secrets. Feeling powerless and confused, Ethan stood paralyzed for a moment, lost in thought. The creaking staircase echoed in his mind, each crack sounding like both an invitation and a warning at the same time. He realized he was at the center of a much larger mystery than he had imagined, and that the truth about his family and the mansion was closer than ever. "I need to find out what happened," he declared to himself, determination growing inside him. Ethan knew he couldn't retreat now. He had to face whatever was waiting upstairs, even if it meant confronting his own fears and the secrets the house guarded with 7 locks. Ethan took a deep breath as he entered the living room, a space that should have been cozy, but now presented itself as a scene of mystery and unease. What once seemed like dusty furniture and familiar objects now looked like a deliberate arrangement of items, each placed with disturbing precision. He observed carefully a circle of candles, an improvised altar with old photos, and small objects that seemed to have belonged to his family. The atmosphere was heavy, an oppressive silence filled the air, as if the house itself were holding its breath. As he approached the altar, Ethan felt his heart race. What was that? A ritual? A cult? He didn't know, but the feeling of being watched was palpable. The smell of flowers, that same scent that had tormented him the night before, floated in the air, intensifying the sense of déjà vu. He remembered his grandmother, her confused words about the man on the stairs, and a chill ran down his spine. Then he noticed something shining under one of the candles. Curious, he crouched to pick up a small tape recorder. Without hesitation, he pressed the play button. His grandmother's frail voice echoed through the room, and her words brought an intense chill. "I know you're here. I've always known," his grandmother said, her voice trembling. The house. It was never the same since he arrived. The man on the stairs. He is not what he seems. You need to be careful, Ethan. Don't trust him. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. This was real. His grandmother was talking about a being, an entity that, according to her, inhabited the house. The recording continued, revealing secrets he had never imagined. "He wants something from you. Don't go up the stairs, please. Don't go." His grandmother's words were interrupted by a loud noise. Ethan's heart raced, and he quickly turned, searching for the source of the noise. To his horror, the living room door slammed shut with a bang, as if an invisible force were pushing it. The room began to darken, and the candles around the circle flickered, creating shadows that danced on the walls. "Ethan." His grandmother's voice sounded again, but not from the tape recorder. He saw her frail, tired body collapsing to the floor, unconscious. Despair took hold of him. He quickly approached, placing his hand on her face. "Grandma, wake up, please." But she didn't respond. The silence was deafening. He got up, feeling the staircase creaking under his feet, as if it were calling him. The staircase, with its old wood and echo filled with secrets, seemed to have come to life, its presence intensifying with each passing second. Ethan hesitated, fear and curiosity fighting within him. He couldn't stay there, but he also didn't want to leave his grandmother alone. I can't leave you here," Ethan whispered, looking at his grandmother's inert form. He knew he needed to act. With one last look at the altar and the circle of candles, he decided he needed to find out what was happening. What did the staircase want from him? He moved away from his grandmother, feeling as if the floor were moving under his feet. The staircase was almost calling him, an irresistible invitation. With his heart racing, he began to climb. Each step was an echo of his doubt, each creak a plea for him to stop. And as he climbed, a voice whispered in his ear, a presence that seemed to grow stronger with each step he took. "You have always been one of us, Ethan. Come, discover the truth." The tension in the atmosphere was palpable, and Ethan knew that by climbing, he was approaching something that would change everything. What would he find upstairs? The man on the stairs? The secrets of his family? The answer he so desperately sought? He wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. The staircase wouldn't leave him in peace until he faced his destiny. Ethan climbed the staircase with his heart pounding, each creak echoing in his mind like a dark warning. The air grew heavier with each step, and he felt that something was watching him, an invisible presence that seemed to follow him. Upon reaching the attic, the dim light of a hanging lamp illuminated the dusty space. The atmosphere was dense, impregnated with the smell of mold and aged wood. In the center of the room, an old mirror stood out, with an ornate frame that seemed to have been carefully carved, but now was covered in dust. Drawn by curiosity, Ethan approached the mirror. Looking at his reflection, he saw not only his image but also fragmented visions of his childhood and happy moments beside his grandmother. He remembered laughter, sunny afternoons in the mansion's garden, and the smell of cookies she used to bake. However, as his emotions intensified, the images began to distort. His grandmother's reflection transformed, showing her younger but with a deep look of sadness. The figure of a man appeared beside her, a man Ethan recognized from the photograph he had found. Ethan's heart raced. The figure was familiar, yet strange at the same time. He felt a wave of sadness upon realizing that the unknown man in the photo was, in fact, a member of his own family. The mirror began to shine intensely, and without thinking, Ethan reached out and touched the cold surface of the glass. In an instant, the environment around him dissolved, and he was thrown into a terrifying vision. He found himself on a sunny day, but the joy was absent. He was in the living room, where the family had gathered. The table was adorned with a feast, but the expressions on the faces were somber. The man from the photo, now clearly visible, stood in a corner, surrounded by lit candles and strange symbols drawn on the floor. The air was filled with the smell of burning wax and something else, something Ethan could barely identify. "You can't do this!" His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory as she tried to stop the man. "What are you thinking? This pact will bring nothing but pain." The man smiled, but there was a touch of despair in his gaze. "We need this, Mother. It's the only way to ensure our safety. You don't understand." Ethan felt her anguish, and suddenly, everything became clear. The tragedy that had unfolded there was a dark pact. The man had sacrificed his own happiness in exchange for power and protection, and the house had become a prison for the family, perpetuating the pain through the generations. He realized that somehow he was connected to this story. With a start, Ethan found himself back in the attic, the mirror now reflecting only his expression of horror. He understood that he wasn't just a spectator, he was the reincarnation of that man. The weight of the revelation fell upon his shoulders like a heavy cloak. The staircase creaked under his weight, because he had always been the true guardian of the mansion, destined to break the curse that tormented his family. "I can't let this happen again," Ethan murmured to himself, determined. "I need to free my grandmother." He knew he had to face the truth and use the knowledge he had gained to break the cycle. With a new purpose, he descended the stairs with firm steps, determination burning in his chest. The path was clear now. He could no longer ignore the warnings. He had to confront what was waiting in the living room. Reaching the foot of the stairs, a shiver ran down his spine, but he didn't hesitate. Pushing the living room door open with force, he entered. The room was silent, but Ethan felt the presence of something more. A shadow danced on the walls, and the atmosphere was heavy, as if the house were holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. "I know what you did," Ethan declared, his voice echoing through the room. "I'm not going to let this continue." A wave of cold swept through the room, and he felt a chill. The light in the room flickered, and a sense of expectation hung in the air. He was ready to face his past and finally free his grandmother from the invisible chains that held her.